My name is Avery Quinn. I'm 33 years old, a trauma nurse at Hennepin in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The kind of place where winter slaps your face before you even clear the sliding ER doors. And last Christmas Eve, I learned what cold really is. Because my own family locked me in a dark, unheated garage while the snow came down like ash, certain ID break, and certain ID finally hand over the favor they said I owed them. Before I tell you how I got out, and how my hidden fortune turned the tables so hard they couldn't speak, do me a quick kindness. Hit like, subscribe, and share if stories of betrayal and justice keep you up at night like they do me. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been excluded or trapped by people who were supposed to love you? Where are you watching from tonight? I'm reading them, I promise. I'll rewind, but not too far. The sound that still wakes me sometimes isn't a scream or a slur. It's the metallic clink of a dollar store padlock dropping into place. It is the whisper through the door. You'll be safe out here for a minute, Ave. We just need you to think. They said a minute. My teeth say hours. I was still in my charcoal church coat, the only fancy thing I own that isn't a pair of compression socks, when my sister Maddie asked me to step into the garage for a sec, to help carry soda from the spare fridge. Her husband, Cam, held the inner door. I didn't see the padlock in his hand until he swung the door shut and the bolt slid. The light went out. I heard my name. Then I listened to the key. Then I heard nothing but the kind of cold that chews on bone. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you kick the door? Why didn't you break a window? I tried. I tried everything a nurse tries when the crash cart won't arrive. Hands, shoulders, voice, strategy. But there are garages in Minnesota built like storm shelters, and this one had no windows, just a sputtering motion light over the exterior that didn't reach me. The inner door was made of steel with a lip, and the outside roll-up was chained to the driveway. I ran gloved fingers along the drywall, found the cheap shelving by smell, paint, old gas, a ghost of turkey fryer oil, and started counting seconds. In trauma, seconds are truth. They tell you what you can still save. Here's the thing about family. They don't need to hit you to hurt you. They can dress the injury in nice words. You're overreacting. It's just until you calm down and call it love. But if you stand very still and listen, you can hear the math underneath. You have what we want. We have what you need. On Christmas Eve, what I needed was heat and mercy. What they wanted was money, or access to it. They thought the cold would break me. The cold just made me clear. Let me place the scene. Outside, Minneapolis was white noise silent, that blizzard hush where everything's padded and empty, the kind of quiet that makes a person feel like a sin. The party, if you can call a crockpot and bad wine a party, was 10 feet away through a locked door at my sister S split level in Coon Rapids. The TV hummed a Hallmark movie. Somewhere, a laugh track misfired. My phone? In Maddie's kitchen, charging like a hostage. And the reason I was there at all? Because I believed, against experience, that holidays could be a restart. I pressed my ear to the door. I could just make out voices. Cam's low growl, Maddie's whisper, desperate and careful, and another voice, my mother's, Ellen, sharp as cracked ice. She'll do it. She always does it. Avery fixes things. I almost laughed. Fixing things is my job. In the ER, I built an order out of shrapnel. I tape faith to odds and call it a shift. But the only patient in that garage was me, and I was not going into shock. Not for them. Not again. If you want to know how I got here, you need the short version of a long story. I'm the oldest of 3. We were Target kids who knew every price tag color by heart. Our dad left when I was 15, and our mother learned a religion called appearances. Maddie learned charm. Our little brother, Eli, learned to escape. I learned to work nights, doubles, whatever it took. By 30, I could insert a line with my eyes closed and break a code brown with a Post-it note. I also learned how to hide a secret in plain sight. Stability. Not lottery money, not crypto riches, just something quiet and airtight ID built out of scraps and grit that didn't belong to anyone else. They knew about my job. They guessed about everything else. The garage air bit my lungs. I tucked my hands into my sleeves and started inventorying the room the way I'd de-inventory a trauma bay after a bad handoff. Snow shovels, salt, a box of old ornaments, a folding table. On the shelf, duct tape, a cracked tote, tiki torch fuel from some summer that pretended to be happy, a dusty space heater, cord frayed, plug blackened. I filed it under Nope. Near the step, a tool bag. I dragged it toward the door with my boot, kneeling to unzip it with fingers I couldn't quite feel. Pliers, a mallet, a set of hex keys. The kind of kit a man like Cam buys when he wants to feel useful. A steel door with a padlock isn't invincible. It's patient. It waits for you to give up. I don't give up. I lined the mallet's rubber head with a rag, set the smallest hex key into the padlock seam, and started tapping, a slow, steady rhythm, counting breaths the way I coach panicked parents in triage. 1, 2, 3, tap, 1, 2, 3, tap. On the fourth series, I heard footsteps on the other side. The lock rattled. Then the worst thing, laughter. "You doing okay in there, Av?" Cam's voice too bright. "Open the door," I said. "Right now." "As soon as you promise," he replied. The way a man talks to a toddler. "As soon as you agree to help." Help meant cosign. Help meant transfer. Help meant we know you're good for it. I took a breath deep enough to hurt. "If you keep me in here, you're committing a crime." From the living room, my mother's voice. "It's family, Avery. Don't dramatize." The cold got meaner. My knees barked against the concrete. That's when something steadied inside me. A click. Softer than the padlock. Louder than any apology. If they wanted me to prove I wasn't the softest one in the room, fine. I would document. I would timestamp. And when I stepped back into the light, I would end this the only way people like them understand, with receipts and silence that costs them something. I stopped tapping. I stood, flexing pins and needles hands, and scanned higher. Above the door, the hinge pins. Paint stuck, yes. Immovable, no. I reached for the pliers, set my jaw, and smiled in the dark. You want to know about the hidden fortune? The thing that left them speechless? You'll get it, all of it. But first, you need to see where the ice cracked in our family's pretty pond. And how many winters it took me to stop skating toward people who would let me drown. Because that's where this story really starts. Long before the lock. Long before the garage. For the first time, I mistook being needed for being loved. When I was a little girl, Christmas meant sugar cookies with too much red frosting, and my dad's scratchy voice singing along to Elvis on the old radio. Back then, our house smelled like cinnamon and wet mittens, and even when the world outside froze solid, I felt warm. That was before Dad left, before Mom started measuring her worth in what the neighbors thought, before I learned that in my family, love was a currency you had to overpay for. I grew up in St. Cloud, Minnesota, the kind of place where everybody knows when you buy a new car or skip church. My dad, Robert Quinn, worked as a mechanic, grease under his nails, stories in his pockets, always making time to explain how engines breathed like hearts. He left when I was 15, not with a bang, but with a silence that lasted years. No goodbye note, no forwarding address, just gone. And Mom? She never forgave him. Not really. She turned that grudge into a crown and wore it until it cut her forehead. Her name is Ellen Quinn. Picture a woman who can smile sweetly at the grocery clerk and then slice you raw in the car ride home. She worked reception at a dental office, and she knew how to weaponize charm like floss. Thin, sharp, and able to cut where you least expected. Ellen taught my sister Maddie to flutter her lashes, my brother Eli to vanish when the shouting started, and me? She taught me that being the responsible one was the only way to earn scraps of peace. I was 16 when I got my first job bussing tables at a diner, sliding tips into an envelope under my mattress. By the time I graduated, I was working doubles, school nurse's aide by day, gas station cashier by night, while Eli slipped into trouble with boys who thought joy came in plastic bags, and Maddie chased after every golden boy quarterback who could buy her a drive-through meal. Guess who Mom called selfish when the electric bill ran late? Not Maddie, not Eli. Always me. "Why can't you help more?" she'd hiss, standing in the kitchen with her arms folded. "I'm working 2 jobs," I'd say. "I'm paying rent here. What else do you want?" "Gratitude," she'd snap. "Respect." Respect. That word meant silence. It meant never asking why Maddie's car got fixed while mine stayed broken, why Eli got bailed out when I was told to handle my own messes, why my birthdays came with grocery store sheet cakes while theirs came with new phones. But here's the thing, responsibility hardens you. By the time I was 21, I was in nursing school on scholarships, taking notes by flashlight in a basement rental, while upstairs my roommates partied like the world was ending. By 23, I had a degree, a badge, and a job that threw me into trauma bays where the only thing louder than the alarms was my own heartbeat. I learned to stitch wounds, compress chests, and deliver news that split lives into before and after. Work became my refuge. The ER made sense. Families didn't. Still, every holiday, I tried. Every Christmas Eve, I'd bring a casserole to Mom's place in Coon Rapids, sit in the corner while Maddie held court with whatever man she was flaunting that year. While Mom asked me about overtime shifts like I was an employee she didn't quite trust. I'd try to tell a story from the hospital, something funny, something light, and they'd roll their eyes. "Can you not talk about blood while we're eating?" Maddie would groan. "You should smile more," Mom would add. "No wonder you're still single." Eli barely showed up anymore. He drifted in and out, eyes too bright, promises too thin. I worried about him, but worrying was my permanent posture. The shift happened slowly. By the time I hit 30, the invitations stopped coming. Maddie married Cam, loud, smug, a man who thought holding a drill made him an engineer. And suddenly there were family dinners I never heard about. I'd scroll Facebook and see photos, turkey carving, 4th of July fireworks, backyard barbecues, smiling faces, beer cans raised. Me? Absent. My comments were ignored. My calls are unanswered. That's when I started saving differently. Not just pennies from paychecks, but deliberately, methodically. I maxed out my 401k. I picked up extra shifts. I lived lean, thrift store coats, secondhand furniture. And every time I slipped money into that account, I thought, one day I won't need them at all. What they didn't know, and what they still done to fully understand, is that I turned that savings into something more. A side investment, a quiet fortune. Not lottery winner riches, but enough to build independence so solid no one could kick it out from under me. I never flaunted it, never bragged. I let them think I was just the tired nurse who showed up late with cold pie. That's safer. People don't try to steal what they don't know exists. Except they guessed. "Last Thanksgiving," Maddie called out of the blue. Her voice was sugary, but I could taste the bitterness underneath. "You still in that apartment, Ave?" "Yes." "Still working all those nights?" "Yes." "You must be doing well then. Nurses make good money. Cam says you probably have a little nest egg." I felt my pulse stutter. "Why?" She laughed. "Just curious." But curiosity in my family was never innocent. It was inventory. It was recon. So when she invited me to come by for Christmas Eve, just like old times, I hesitated. Something in her voice was too eager, too rehearsed. I told myself maybe it was a chance. Maybe Mom had softened. Maybe this was a door creaking open again. I was wrong. Because that night, the house smelled of pine and roast beef. The lights twinkled. The music crooned. And yet, the moment I stepped into that garage with Maddie's helpful smile leading me by the elbow, I realized family hadn't changed. They'd just gotten smarter at hiding the claws. And this time, their claws weren't after attention or validation. They were after something far colder. My money. The garage smelled like motor oil and damp cardboard. One bare bulb flickered above, throwing long shadows across stacks of boxes labeled Xmas lights and winter gear. The house beyond the door hummed with laughter and clinking glasses. But in here? The air was cold, the cement floor biting through my shoes. At first, I thought Maddie had just pulled me aside for some awkward heart-to-heart. She smiled too brightly, the way she always did when she was about to say something ugly and wanted to disguise it as concern. "Ava," she began, smoothing her dress like a nervous bridesmaid, "you've always been the strong one." I froze. In my family, strong never meant resilient. It meant mule, pack horse, the one expected to carry the weight so others could play. She glanced toward the door, then leaned closer. "Mom's been worried. Things are tight." There it was. The opening note in a song I'd heard too many times. Money. Always money. Before I could answer, the door creaked open. Mom stepped in, her arms crossed, lips pursed in that pinched smile that could sour milk. Behind her came Cam, Maddie's husband, with his puffed chest and beer breath, filling the space like he owned it. "Why are we in the garage?" I asked. My voice came out steady, but my pulse thudded in my throat. "To talk," Mom said. "Without distractions." That's when Eli stumbled in. Thin, jittery, eyes darting. He shoved his hands deep into his hoodie pocket and gave me a half smirk. "Hey, sis." I hadn't seen him in months. He looked worse than the last time. Cheeks hollow, skin pale. My stomach clenched. "What's going on?" I asked again. Maddie's smile sharpened. "We know, Ava." "Know what?" "That you've been saving. That you've got money stashed away." She tilted her head, eyes glinting. "Don't bother denying it. Nurses don't live on ramen forever." Cam chuckled, low and mean. "Come on, Ava. You drive a 10-year-old car, wear thrift store coats, have no vacations and no splurges? That's not a struggle. That's hiding cash." Mom's voice cut through, thin as wire. "We're family. Families share. And it's Christmas. Time to be generous." The garage seemed to shrink around me. My breath fogged in the cold air, and every instinct screamed, "Trap." "I've worked for what I have," I said slowly. "Every dollar, every shift. No one handed me anything." Eli laughed, high, brittle. "Oh, please. You've been sitting on a fortune while the rest of us—" "The rest of you what?" I snapped. "Blew through every chance you had?" Mom's eyes narrowed. "Don't take that tone. We didn't bring you out here to argue." "Then what did you bring me here for?" That's when Cam moved. He stepped between me and the door, broad shoulders blocking the exit. "Simple, Ava. You help us out. Loan us what you've got. Or maybe just gift it. After all, Maddie's pregnant." Pregnant. My chest tightened. Maddie's hand drifted protectively to her stomach. Whether it was true or just another manipulation, I couldn't tell. But the implication was clear. I was heartless if I refused. I shook my head. "You can't be serious." Mom's smile vanished. Her voice turned cold, sharp as icicles. "We are dead serious. We know you've been keeping secrets. And if you loved this family, you'd prove it tonight." That's when Eli pulled something out of his hoodie pocket. Not a knife. Worse, in a way. My old bank envelope, the one I used to keep under my mattress in college. Crinkled, stained, familiar. My blood ran cold. "Where did you get that?" He smirked. "You're not the only one who knows how to look through boxes." Betrayal tastes metallic. I could feel it coating my tongue. "You went through my things?" I whispered. Mom didn't even flinch. "Don't be dramatic. We needed to know, and now we do." Maddie's voice softened. Syrup over poison. "Ava, just write a check. 10,000. That's nothing to you. but it means everything to us. I stared at them. My sister with her painted smile, my mother with her frozen glare, my brother twitching like a marionette, my brother-in-law smirking in the doorway. The family who erased me is now demanding I bankroll their comfort. And that's when the chill of the garage became something else entirely. Not just cold air, but a warning. A foreshadowing of what they were about to do next. Because in a blink, the door behind Cam slammed shut. The lock clicked. And suddenly, I wasn't just trapped in a conversation. I was trapped in their plan. The sound of the lock was louder than the Christmas music drifting in from the house. Louder than the clinking glasses, the muffled laughter, the hum of the furnace. It was final, metallic, and it rattled straight through my bones. For a second, no one moved. The garage bulb buzzed overhead, the only witness. Then Cam leaned back against the door, arms folded, wearing the kind of smirk that makes your fists ache. "Now we can really talk," he said. Maddie slid her hand over her stomach again, like she was clutching a prop. "Ava, don't make this difficult. We all know you've been hoarding money. You don't need it the way we do." I took a step back, my shoulder brushing against a stack of boxes. Cold cardboard. Colder silence. "You went through my things," I whispered. "You took my envelope. That was mine." Eli laughed, but it was an ugly, nervous sound. "Relax. It's just paper. You've got more, don't you? You always do." His eyes twitched toward Maddie like he was waiting for approval. Mom's voice cut through, calm but hard, the way it always was when she'd already decided I was guilty. "Ava, don't act like a victim. You're doing well, and family comes first. If you had been around more, you'd know how much we've been struggling." "Struggling?" I repeated, my voice breaking on the word. "You cut me out for years. 12 Christmases, 12 Thanksgivings, 12 birthdays I spent alone. And now you're struggling?" Maddie flinched, but Mom didn't. She just crossed her arms tighter. "We thought you needed space." "No," I snapped. "You needed me invisible, and now you need me to be useful." The bulb flickered overhead, and for a moment I saw them the way I always suspected they were, not family, not safe, but predators who had finally decided to pounce. Cam's voice dropped, low and deliberate. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll write a check tonight. 10,000, maybe 20, or—" He shrugged, smiling like it was no big deal. "We can make some calls, share some things you wouldn't want shared." My stomach dropped. "What things?" Eli pulled out his phone, the cracked screen glowing blue. He swiped, tapped, then held it up for me to see. Photos, screenshots, copies of my bank transfers. Every time I'd moved money from savings to investments. Every careful transaction I thought was private. My blood turned to ice. "How did you—" Eli grinned, teeth yellow in the dim light. "You should really lock your laptop better. Saved me a lot of digging." I staggered back against the boxes. They weren't just after a handout. They'd been watching, tracking, waiting. Maddie stepped closer, her voice sugar-sweet. "Ava, please, don't turn this into a fight. Just help us. One check, and this can all go away." Go away. As if my years of sacrifice, my endless hours at the hospital, the loneliness they left me in, could vanish with ink on paper. I shook my head slowly. "You have no idea what you're doing." Mom's face hardened. "Enough. You will help, or you'll regret it." Her words echoed sharp as frost. Regret it. And that's when Cam reached behind him, twisted the lock, and opened the door just wide enough to call out into the hall. "Hey, everyone!" his voice boomed. "Ava's got something to say." Laughter spilled in from the living room, but no one came. He closed the door again, turned the lock, and grinned. "See? No one's coming to save you. So let's make this easy." The garage suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier, my breath clouding in the chill. Betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was here, living, breathing, cornering me in my own mother's house. And in that moment, I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. This wasn't my family anymore. This was a threat. And if I wanted to survive this night with more than frostbite, I'd have to turn their game against them. The garage air was sharp with gasoline and old paint, the kind of cold that crawls under your skin and refuses to leave. My breath fogged in short bursts. Cam leaned against the door like a guard dog. Eli scrolled his cracked phone, and Maddie stood in the middle of the floor, arms crossed over her stomach as if her unborn child gave her leverage. And then there was Mom, my mother, the woman who once tucked me into bed, whispering lullabies. Now her eyes were steel, her lips thin, her words poison. "You're not leaving until we settle this," she said. "Settle what?" My voice cracked, but not from weakness, from fury. "You stole my father's inheritance, you erased me from this family, and now you're shaking me down for more?" Maddie rolled her eyes. "Inheritance? Please. Dad's money was family money. It went where it needed to." "Needed?" I spat. "To your vacations? To Eli's gambling? To Cam's half-baked business schemes?" Cam straightened, his smile gone. "Careful, Ava. You don't want to make this worse." But it was already worse. The truth of it hit me like a slap. I was locked in a freezing garage on Christmas Eve, cornered by the very people who should have loved me most. And they weren't going to stop. Not unless I stopped them first. I pressed my palms against the icy concrete wall, grounding myself. I thought of my patients, the children I cared for at the hospital, the parents who trusted me, the nights I worked double shifts so no one would go without care. I built everything I had with sweat and sacrifice. And here was my so-called family, trying to strip it away because they saw me as nothing more than an ATM with a pulse. "You want money?" I said finally, my voice low, shaking not from fear but from rage. "Fine. Let's talk money." Eli's head snapped up, greedy. Cam smirked again. Mom's eyes softened. She thought she'd won. But Maddie hesitated. Maybe she remembered the girl I used to be, the sister who braided her hair, the one who covered for her late-night sneak-outs. Maybe. Or maybe she just didn't like the way my voice had changed. Because in that moment, I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their reckoning. I stepped forward, slow and steady, closing the space between us. But understand this. Once we open that door, once we write down numbers, there's no going back. You'll have to live with what happens next. Cam snorted. "What, you gonna call the cops? Cry about family drama?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No, I'm going to do something far worse." The words hung in the air, heavier than the cold. Eli shifted uncomfortably, thumb hovering over his screen. Maddie's lips parted, but no sound came. Even Mom, queen of control, faltered for half a second. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just let the silence grow until it filled every crack of that garage, because the truth was, I had nothing left to lose with them. And they had everything to lose with me. That was the breaking point. Not when they locked the door. Not when they waved my bank transfers like weapons. But right then, when I decided I wasn't going to beg or cry or buy my way out, I was going to fight back. And when I did, it would be on my terms. The moment I stepped back from them, the plan began forming. Not fully, just sparks. But sparks are enough to light an inferno. Cam leaned against the door, smug again, sure he'd broken me. Eli muttered something about finally getting paid. Maddie smoothed her sweater, pretending to be superior, but her eyes darted. And Mom had that look I knew too well, the one she wore when she thought she'd won. They had no idea what I was holding back. Because what they didn't know, and what I would never have told them in that icy garage, was that my father hadn't trusted them either. Not with money, not with legacy, And certainly not with me. When he passed, he left behind more than a modest inheritance. He left a map, a layered one, a savings account in my name, yes, but also a series of safe deposit boxes across the city. My mother thought she drained everything when she reallocated funds into Maddie S. wedding and Cam West's failing car dealership. She thought she had cut me out clean. But she never knew what Dad whispered in my ear the day before he died. Never keep all your eggs in one basket, Ava, and never trust people who think they deserve your basket. So while they were wasting their years bleeding the scraps they could reach, I had been quietly growing the fortune Dad actually intended for me. Investments, stocks, bonds, real estate. And thanks to my own hard work, it had multiplied into something they couldn't even imagine. But they were about to. I didn't show them fear as I sat back down on that creaky stool in the garage. I showed them the calculation. I asked questions, cold, clinical questions that made them think I was negotiating. How much do you think I'm worth? What exactly do you expect me to hand over? And if I said no, then what? They answered eagerly, falling over each other, exposing their greed in every word. Maddie wanted a house. Eli wanted startup capital. Cam wanted a car lot back. Mom wanted control. I nodded, taking mental notes, memorizing every selfish syllable, because later I would use their words to bury them. When Cam finally unlocked the garage, my hands were stiff from the cold, but my resolve was fire. I walked out with my head high, my steps steady. They thought they'd intimidated me into compliance. But in reality, they had just handed me all the ammunition I needed. That night, back in my apartment, I spread everything across my dining table. Old bank statements, Dad's letters, proof of every shady thing they'd done with what little money they could touch, my savings account logins, my investment records. And one more thing, my father's handwritten letter from a safe deposit box they didn't know existed. It wasn't long, only a page, but it was everything. Protect what's yours. And if they ever come for you, Ava, don't let them win. I whispered the words out loud, my voice breaking and steadying all at once. Don't let them win. So I wouldn't. I began planning step by step, document everything, every email, every bank withdrawal they forced, every ugly voicemail. Build a wall of evidence, leverage their greed, give them just enough rope to tighten around their own necks. Set the trap. Make them believe they're finally getting their payout. Flip the script. Reveal the truth in a way that leaves them with nothing. No money, no excuses, no reputation to hide behind. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stared at the skyline out my window, watching snow dust the streets like ashes, and I promised myself, if they thought they could freeze me out in a garage and walk away unscathed, they hadn't seen what a daughter scorned could do. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And I was going to deliver it, gift-wrapped, on Christmas. The first step in revenge isn't fire. It's frost. Slow. Creeping. Unmistakable once it sets in. I didn't barge into their lives screaming about betrayal. I didn't wave proof in their faces and demand apologies they'd never mean. No. I let them stew in their arrogance because arrogance makes people sloppy. 3 days after the garage incident, I sent my mother a text. Just 6 words. We need to talk about the money. She replied in less than a minute. Finally, she must have thought. We met at her house that evening. The living room looked exactly like it always had. Cheap Christmas decor from a discount store, garland taped to the mantel, the faint smell of peppermint tea. Maddie was perched on the couch, already smirking, while Eli hovered near the window. Cam? He strutted in late, like he owned the place. I sat there, clutching a manila folder. They leaned in, greedy. They thought I'd caved. Mom wasted no time. So, Ava, how much did your father leave? Be honest, we know you've been hiding it. I tilted my head. Why? So you can drain it? Like you drained my college fund? Like you drained Dad's savings? Her face stiffened. Maddie rolled her eyes. Oh, here we go again. But Eli betrayed them first. Come on, Ava. We all know you've been holding out. You've got accounts somewhere. Just tell us the numbers. We deserve to know. We deserve. That phrase burned like acid in my chest. Instead of answering, I slid the folder across the table. Mom's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside? Just enough. Bank statements showing a mid-range account balance. Real, but not the whole truth. Enough to bait them. Their eyes lit up. Maddie whispered, "This is it? This is all she's got?" And Mom's lips curved into the smile of someone who thinks they've won. "Don't worry," I said, my voice calm. "There's more. But I'll only unlock it if you agree to certain terms." They leaned forward. Hooked. Cam barked a laugh. "Terms? You think you can boss us around?" I met his stare without blinking. Yes. Then I laid the first trap. I told them I'd draw up a legal agreement to share the inheritance, splitting it evenly, but with oversight. "It'll make everything fair," I said. "No fighting, no more secrets." They agreed instantly. Too instantly. That's how I knew I had them. Because what they didn't realize was that agreeing to legal oversight meant putting everything on record. Their greed had just handed me the leverage I needed. That night, I emailed a lawyer Dad had once trusted. Attached to my message were screenshots of texts from my siblings, voice recordings of their threats, and a draft agreement I pretended was for fairness, but was really designed to expose them. Small win, yes, but crucial. They thought they were tightening their grip on me. In truth, they were walking into my net. And the sweetest part? Watching them celebrate after I left. I lingered in my car outside, listening through the cracked window as Maddie's laugh floated into the night. "She's finally giving in," she said. Cam replied, "Told you she's weak." Weak. I gripped the steering wheel, smiling for the first time in days. Because weakness wasn't what they'd seen. It was patience. And patience is the deadliest weapon in revenge. The small wins had begun. Next stop? Make them believe the jackpot was within reach, just before I snatched it out of their hands. Christmas morning dawned cold and sharp, the kind of day where the air itself feels like glass. Frost clung to the edges of my window, and the silence outside reminded me of the year before. Alone, locked in that garage, shivering until my teeth ached. But this year I wasn't shivering. This year I was ready. I dressed with intention. A deep green dress, pearls my father had given me on my 21st birthday, and heels that clicked like gunshots against the hardwood. I wanted every detail of me to scream one message: I am not the girl you buried in the cold. By noon, I pulled into Mom's driveway. Their cars were already there. Cam's beat-up truck, Eli's flashy lease he couldn't afford, Maddie's SUV with a bow decal on the back window. The scent of cinnamon and pine hit me as soon as I stepped inside. Fake cheer, manufactured warmth. They were waiting in the living room, cups of cider in hand, eyes gleaming like wolves about to pounce. Mom started with her sugary tone. "Ava, darling, Merry Christmas. Did you bring the papers?" I smiled. "Of course." I set my leather satchel on the coffee table and slowly unzipped it. They leaned forward, practically salivating. Inside were the documents they thought would secure their future. The agreement to divide Dad's hidden inheritance. Except it wasn't what they thought. The first set of papers? The fake trust agreement I'd shown them before, signed by me but never notarized. Just enough to look real. The second set? The real documents I'd prepared with Dad's lawyer. Proof of my father's will. Proof of every penny he'd left. And most damning, proof that he'd specifically written them out. All of them. I slid the top paper forward. Mom's eyes lit up, greedy. "So it's true," she whispered. This is finally ours. Cam reached for the page, but I slapped my hand down on it first. The smack echoed through the room. No, I said softly. It's mine, and it always was. Silence, heavy, waiting to shatter. Maddie laughed first, a sharp, high-pitched bark. You're bluffing. You wouldn't have brought it if you weren't ready to share. I tilted my head. Is that what you think? Then maybe you should read page 2. They flipped the page and the room changed. Their smirks faltered, their faces drained. Because there it was, in black ink, notarized and legal. Dad's will. Explicitly naming me as the sole heir. Explicitly excluding any family member who mistreated or abandoned Ava during her lifetime. It wasn't just money. It was a condemnation. Cam's jaw tightened. This is fake. I pulled out the lawyer's letter, signed and dated. Try again. Eli slammed his cider on the table. You tricked us. I leaned back, folding my arms. No, I outplayed you. And then, I pressed play. From my bag came a small speaker and outpoured their own voices. The recordings I'd captured weeks ago. Maddie sneering about me being useless. Eli threatening to crack open that account. Cam laughing about me, freezing in the garage like a stray cat. The blood drained from Mom's face as the words filled the room. I let it play until Cam lunged for the speaker. I yanked it back. Don't bother. Copies are with my lawyer, my bank, and a cloud account. Even if you burn this one, the evidence lives. The room was dead quiet. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. Then I dropped the final strike. An envelope. Inside? A notice of formal charges I was prepared to file. Harassment, unlawful confinement, and financial threats. Signed drafts, ready to go. I slid it across the table like a final chess move. Merry Christmas, I said. You wanted my fortune? Congratulations. You just inherited consequences instead. Mom's lip trembled. Maddie swore under her breath. Eli's fists clenched. Cam looked like he wanted to break something, but none of them moved, because they knew it was over. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the cornered one. They were. I stood, smoothed my dress, and slung my satchel over my shoulder. Here's how this works, I said. You never call me, text me, or show up at my door again. The moment you do, those charges get filed. And if you try to smear me in town, the recordings go public. I paused at the doorway, turning back just once. Dad left me everything for a reason. Maybe now you finally understand why. And then I left them there, silent, stunned, speechless. On Christmas Eve, they had locked me in the cold. This Christmas, I locked them in their own shame. The drive home that night felt like the world had shifted on its axis. For years, I had been the one carrying their cruelty like a second skin. Every slammed door, every insult, every moment of exclusion had settled into me like frost. But now, the weight was gone. As I pulled into the quiet street where my condo overlooked the river, the Christmas lights twinkled on my neighbors' balconies. For once, I didn't feel jealous of the families gathered around tables. I felt free. I kicked off my heels, poured myself a glass of red wine, and stepped onto my balcony. The cold air bit at my cheeks, but it wasn't the same cold as last year. This one was bracing, alive, like the first breath after being underwater too long. Down below, fireworks popped early across the skyline. My phone buzzed again and again, unread messages piling up. I didn't have to look to know who they were from. My mother, my siblings, maybe even Richard, my stepfather, who had long ago vanished from the picture. I left the phone inside. Tonight wasn't about them. Still, I knew the fallout had only just begun. The next morning, it started. At the cafe where I always got my coffee, the barista leaned in and whispered, "Saw your cousins last night. They looked like someone had dropped a bomb in their laps." By noon, the town grapevine was alive. Small towns don't keep secrets for long, and recordings spread faster than holiday gossip. I didn't release them publicly, but word got out that I had them. And in a place where reputation was currency, that alone was enough. Cam's construction job started drying up. Clients suddenly found someone else. Eli's girlfriend dumped him after hearing what he'd said on tape. Maddie's PTA board encouraged her to step back, citing concerns about her judgment. And Mom? Mom couldn't walk into church without whispers following her pew to pew. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Their own words were the knife. All I did was hold up the mirror. But the most unexpected aftermath came from strangers. On Christmas night, I finally opened my messages. There, tucked between my family's desperate texts, were dozens of notes from people I barely knew. Ava, I've been through the same thing. Thank you for showing it's possible to stand up. You don't know me, but hearing about what you did gave me courage. My sister locked me out of her house for years. Tonight, I finally told her no more. It hit me harder than I expected. My revenge wasn't just for me. It was a spark for others who had been silenced, erased, left out in the cold. Weeks passed. Winter melted into the first hints of spring. My siblings avoided me in public. Mom sent letters I never opened. The lawyer confirmed everything was secure. The will, the accounts, the protections I'd put in place. For the first time in years, I slept without checking the locks twice. I went to work without bracing for an ambush. I laughed with friends without guilt shadowing the sound. And slowly, a truth settled into me. Revenge hadn't just ended their control. It had returned my life to me. One evening in March, as the sun dipped low over the river, I sat at my kitchen table with my journal. I wrote one sentence, simple and final. They locked me in the cold, but I built the fire and they'll never put it out again. I closed the book, poured myself another glass of wine, and smiled. The girl in the garage was gone. The woman on the balcony was free. Christmas used to be my most painful reminder. A season of warmth and joy for others. But for me? It was the night I froze in a garage, listening to my family laugh inside the house while I sat shivering in the dark. But not anymore. This Christmas, the tables turned. I wasn't the forgotten daughter, the invisible sister, the easy target anymore. I was the woman who refused to stay silent. The woman who built her life on her own terms. In the weeks after my revenge, something shifted in me. For so long, I thought closure would come from an apology. From my mother finally looking me in the eye and saying, "I'm sorry." From my siblings realizing they had broken something precious. But closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. It comes from standing up in the very place they tried to bury you and saying, "I refuse to stay small. My family may never apologize. They may never change. But here's the thing. I don't need them to. Because I'm no longer waiting for their permission to exist, to thrive, to take up space in this world." If you've listened this far, I want you to hear me clearly. Revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about balance. It's about showing the people who hurt you that you are no longer theirs to control. It's about teaching yourself that you can survive, rebuild, and rise. That's what I did on Christmas Eve. And that's what I hope you'll do, whatever your garage might be. Now I want to turn it over to you. Have you ever been betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect you? Have you ever had to take back your power after being shut out, excluded, or underestimated? Tell me in the comments. I read every story, and I promise your voice matters here. And before you go, don't forget, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well enough that they can't look away.